Let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to the cybersecurity track entitled Advanced Cybersecurity Startups, How to Work with Large Enterprise Companies. We're excited to have you join us today. And to let everybody know, this particular track session was sponsored by Dell Technologies, so we thank them for that. We're joined here with Chad, Lalit, Dan, and Jay. My name is Subrata Saha. I'm a corporate attorney in this space. I'm also captain for cybersecurity track, and I'm hosting the sessions. We have another session after this, and that's about the regulatory framework. But right now, we'll be talking about working with large companies with Lalit, Dan, Jay, and Chad. And we'll go ahead and introduce some introductions. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Chad, who's first in line.
Yeah, so I'm going to be brief on introductions because that's not what anyone's here for. I'm the president of digital forensics and incident response at Strauss Friedberg, which is an Aon company. We do cybersecurity consulting, proactive and reactive. We help people be more secure on the front end, and when they have incidents, we help them respond to them on the back end. A lot of the biggest incidents in the world, we've worked, Yahoo, worked on Target, Home Depot, others you may be familiar with, and excited to talk to you guys today about cybersecurity and startups.
Lalit?
Awesome. Hello, everyone. This is Lalit Aluwalia, and I am a managing director with Accenture. And Accenture is one of the largest global management consulting firms, and we also do cybersecurity extensively. My role is that I'm responsible for our cybersecurity line of business within North America, specifically for health and public service and higher education domains here. And as Chad mentioned, being part of this journey, with multiple clients, and a lot of them include Fortune 100 clients across the world. But I'm here to kind of really have this conversation and share how important a role is of startups as well as the newcomers in our domain, especially in cybersecurity.
Dan?
Can't hear you, Dan.
I'd go to Jay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
It sounds like we need more startup innovation in just the video conferencing space. So that's the takeaway from me for this so far. Guys, I'm sorry I was late getting in here. I tried multiple machines, multiple browsers, and I finally found a combination that works. So my apologies. I'm an attorney at Jones Day, former federal prosecutor in Texas, and I led the district's efforts to prosecute IP theft, cybercrime, and the like. I transitioned over to Jones Day. I'm in the data privacy and cybersecurity practice group. Look, I'm in position to engage a lot of cybersecurity service providers on behalf of our client base, which tends to be your bigger clients, right? Your Fortune 500, your Fortune 100. So large institutions. Looking forward to this discussion. I think it's important. Hey, and I look, I'm usually in suit and tie, and because this is Dallas Startup Week, I ditched the tie. So hopefully you guys can appreciate that.
All right, thank you. And Dan? Not able to hear Dan for some reason. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So what can one of the questions that a lot of startups and entrepreneurs and founders are wondering about is how do they compete for contracts against bigger, larger companies, particularly in the cybersecurity space? Can you any of you guys speak about that?
Look, I'll take a shot. I think that companies across the board are trying to do more with less right now, and I see two areas, quite frankly, where startups can compete and, quite frankly, succeed or prevail over larger providers and interfacing with these companies. One is cost, and one is responsiveness and timing. So I come at it more from a reactive perspective, right? I'm getting a significant amount of background noise, so maybe somebody ought to go on mute. But You know, at the end of the day, clients are asking me, what's the cost, what's the projected cost, and how quickly can we make this happen, and how painful or pain-free is the contracting process, is the negotiation process. And if I can check all three of those boxes for a given vendor, in other words, hey, relatively low cost but still high quality. B, look, they're responsive. You're the biggest game in town for them. They're going to jump when you say to jump. And C, I can promise you, big company, we'll get a contract in place with these guys. We'll get them engaged ASAP, because after an incident, as you guys all appreciate, time is of the essence. So, you know, the same dynamics apply to proactive services, your vulnerability scans and pen tests and risk assessments and things of that sort, but it's especially critical for forensic services. So I would say focus on those three things. And quite frankly, a startup ought to be able to lap a bigger provider on those metrics.
Yeah. So I will probably add to what Jay just described. I'll probably say the role of a startup when it comes to the bigger corporations, and in this case, when I talk about Accenture, like, and as I said, like, we almost have 10,000 security professionals around the world, while we have 500,000 like workforce. Despite that bigger workforce in cybersecurity alone, we always have to go to what we call as niche providers, or the ones that really are doing something unique or something creative and innovative. And I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of innovation and creativity when it comes to cybersecurity. Why? Because if you really look at the threat landscape, is constantly changing. The channels, the exposure, how, like, the hacking community now is kind of really, making everything vulnerable. Plus, look around you, the business models itself. Who knew that COVID-19 will transform the world in a way it has already? Telehealth services, remote workforce, and everything. A lot of bigger organizations are not as nimble and flexible as the startups are, because startups are really focusing on very specific aspect, can move faster. And I think this is where the importance in a space like cybersecurity really comes in, where we do need to engage more and more startups that are really doing some great work, and then have them then, either not contracted. There are other ways to can really engage, besides that, where we do kind of like, fund some of those startups to really become a bigger player or mature their products. And then down the line, they also get acquired by the larger corporations. So we can go in 100 different dimensions, but I think that really should summarize what is the real role of a startup when it comes to, like, for the bigger corporations.
So how do you, when you're doing negotiations with these larger companies, how do you not get pushed around as a smaller company?
So that's perfect. I want to jump in here, because you asked a question that can be interpreted one of two ways. If you're a small cybersecurity startup, what do you do? But I suspect that that's not the case for most of the people in the audience. I suspect most of the people in the audience have a business that's a startup, but not in the cybersecurity field. And yet you've got a cybersecurity problem as you try to engage with large businesses. So government contracts, banks, financial institutions. What you find when you go to those guys, and let's say they have an RFP, or let's say you get a meeting with them and they're wanting to engage. If it's a financial institution, for example, that financial institution is going to expect you to be able to comply with certain cybersecurity standards and have certain certifications. That's tough when you're a year-old company with seed money and 12 employees to meet those standards. And I'll tell you, if your question is how do you keep from getting pushed around by big enterprise companies, you are going to get pushed around by big enterprise companies. They're not going to bend their standards to allow you to skate on them. I mean, that's just the reality. And so I think what you have to do is quickly get agile on what are the standards and how do I comply in an efficient way? Because there are ways to be compliant and secure that are efficient and appropriate for a startup. You don't have to have the same approach as Fortune 10 or Fortune 50 or Fortune 100. There are small companies that deal with these big companies that essentially dictate terms and are able to do it without going broke.
Ken, you've had some experience working, making contracts with large companies. What kind of challenges have you faced? Oh, can't hear. Let's see here.
I think he should just write his answers out in Post-it notes and just slap them right up against the video. I think that's the way we handle this.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's see here. So, one of the.
Can I? I'm sorry to monopolize the airtime. I know we only have 45 minutes and we were late, but can I? That to some degree. I'll shut up and let Dan do it.
You got me?
Yes.
Am I on now? Okay. All right. So, Sabrata, tell me your question again. So
what are some of the challenges that you've had in getting contracts with your startup with some of these larger companies?
Yeah. So since I have a sound now, let me give a quick background, and then I'll explain kind of the life cycle of what I learned along the way. My background's been in email security. Started an email an anti-spam company in 2005, and in 2008 I started an email encryption company. And with the anti-spam company, it was an all or none type of platform. You had to integrate that across your whole organization. There wasn't a way to kind of compartmentalize anything, and we had zero success with the enterprise. It was just a non-starter. Symantec, Cisco, those guys had competing products, and you're just not going to go for a small 12-guy shop when you have, Cisco or whatnot that's going to offer a similar product. It doesn't really matter the price point. So where we started to have success was with the encryption side of things, because that could be done in little chunks. So we could say, okay,
Yeah, we lost your voice, Dan. Again.
Subrata, just let's keep moving.
Yeah. So, okay. So, let's see here. So, one of the other issues that a lot of startups face is, or a lot of, businessmen that are, maybe not as well known, is they get the door shut in their face a lot. And so how would you advise, those in the cybersecurity industry, particularly these startups, these young companies, these people that are these fresh faces, who how do they get access to the people who can make decisions at these larger companies? Like, what do you have some tips? Do you have some suggestions for that?
So brother, let me start with this one. Given we work with a variety of different vendors, variety of different players and others, and as a larger corporation, usually what we really have, or at least a lot of the larger corporations have, is alliances channels. And those alliances channels then also can really work through what we really call as the business development teams and others, who happen to really go, like, for example, different conferences, different events and stuff, so that's one forum where a lot of the where I've seen like startups and the players will come and showcase their products, their technologies, and even really have a chance and opportunity to network with those business development teams, who then can really coordinate that. I think really the goal is to really get in front of the alliances teams that these corporations work. Many times what happens is, the smaller players think as a business owner, let me go and reach out to them, which is good. They can have a connectivity, but alliances team are the formal channels that really help them facilitate within the organization. So if one thing that I can really leave behind from this one is to really get to that, who is the liaison between the business as well as between the smaller players, and how to be able to get to it. Also understand that the different organizations have different way of contracting methods. For example, like for us, we need to have folks or even organizations, no matter how great a product we have, they need to be in a contractor exchange forum as approved business organization or intermediary, right, for us. So be able to kind of identify those channels and then really, identify some of the key folks. There's not like one method, right? You still have to kind of go through the hoops and circles of like really getting to know some of the folks, but starting with those events, where you are looking for those organizations to come and participate, be able to network, then get to the right, platforms within organizations, I think is the key to really get on there.
Hey, can I just a couple of things, Mr. Broad? I'm sorry to butt in here, but look, I think it depends on proactive.
No, please.
Yeah, I think it depends on proactive versus reactive work, right? So if you're on the reactive side, if you're a forensics investigator, look, this is going to sound like a used car salesman pitching my own self here. Forgive me for that, but oftentimes it's legal that's driving those decisions, those engagement decisions. And so if I'm in business development for a startup on the reactive side, honestly, I'm making a list of attorneys that do this stuff, whether in my geographic jurisdiction or sort of that service the clients of the size I want to target. And I'm reaching out, I'm beating the pavement. And entrepreneurs, you guys are nothing if not persistent on this front. So I would do that and get to know sort of that legal contact, whether it's at external law firms or in-house at the specific companies themselves. If it's proactive work, sometimes it can be legal, but oftentimes it's not, right? And what I found is the bigger the client, the lower down on the org chart, the purchasing decisions flow, right? So out there, CISOs sometimes don't have that sort of engagement ability or engagement authority. That often is higher up to maybe a CFO level or a CIO or something along those lines. The bigger the company, the more those decisions get pushed down. And there are groups all over the place. Like in Dallas, the CISO Executive Network is a good example. There are other groups where these CISOs and CIOs congregate. Same for attorneys as well. And again, entrepreneurs, you guys beat the pavement. I would find myself a chair at those tables and start to build those networking relationships. The other thing I'll say is for reactive services, contact the insurance providers. So much of this space is becoming commoditized overnight because of insurance coverage, and they're force feeding the use of certain providers to the companies that are insured. You want to be on those panels. You want to be fully covered by those insurance providers such that you're on the short list at the outset. But in my business development plan, I would also include a list of those insurance provider names, work the phones, beat the pavements, make sure you're in on those short lists.
Yeah. Sorry, so brother, I'm going to go back to another point here, which is I think important, besides all the
Please do.
Legal and the contracting, especially for the startups in the cybersecurity space, this is the space which is also happens to be very competitive, right? When, like, example being, go to RSA conference, you probably see thousands of vendors really coming in and showcasing their products. And trust me, for even like one singular function, they're like 10 different vendors. The best way to also can really get in front of the larger corporations and be able to engage is to kind of differentiate and build some credibility. So one channel is going to, of course, be proactive, as Jay was saying, like really be able to participate in the forums and be in front of them. The other channel that you might want to do is kind of like build some credibility and like really see maybe that can be the forum that large organizations get to know about you as well. Because when that happens, then it becomes even an easier way of integration. Because then we will reach out to them or the startups or like those innovation creators and stuff and say, hey, we are interested in kind of really, prototyping with your products and stuff. And we have seen many a times that those things, work out really well, for a lot of the smaller corporations.
So what are some of the needs of these large companies that you've noticed recently? Are there any trends? What are they looking for in this industry?
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in with one that I think startup can fill a great role on. I think if you offer a service, a product, an app, a tool, whatever it is, you're going to be competing with somebody else who probably has some version of that. Lalit made that point very well. You've got 10 competitors from day one. But one of the things that I have seen is on generally any of these subjects, for example, Dan created I think, Dan, what you said is an anti-spam filter of some sort or product like that. But, there are other products like that. Where companies struggle is training. So for example, phishing. phishing is one of the #1 entry points into a corporate security right now, enterprise security. And a lot of people have anti-phishing tools of some sort, but companies are also desperate for phishing training. And so one of the ways that I would say for anyone with a startup in this industry, great, you offer a product, you offer a service, you offer consulting, add a training module to that. And that's a great sort of foot in the door entry point that'll also make you money. And so I would say as a good starting point, have a training module to whatever you offer.
Right. Yeah. So to kind of like elaborate on what Chad just said, right? I would probably say the good news in the cybersecurity space is that of all the other things, I'm pretty sure I can name a few others, but not many can say the same thing, which is cybersecurity is constantly changing every day. What that really means that even with the established players, there's no establishment there. You can really derail them by really creating something which actually works. And to be honest, look at Zoom, for example. Cisco WebEx versus like Microsoft Teams and still you have Zoom video, right? Like really differentiated platform and things like really changing for the enablement. Same thing in cybersecurity. The good thing, with the cybersecurity now, with the startups, especially even in today's time and age, look at around you. And this is what I always tell to different organizations, even at the consulting level. Every business model is transforming today. Whether you look at automobile, like you have autonomous vehicles, look at public sector, you talk about smart cities and a better way of efficiently doing those things. Look at healthcare, remote healthcare, telehealth services, implanted devices and stuff. Name anything, and you can find in the same domain, just to Chad's example, what he was going, pen testing. Pen testing for an OT device is different from pen testing a server in your data center. That means I might be great at doing what I call this traditional data center pen testing, but am I really able to kind of really do the same thing at the OT IT level? That's where I really say there's no bar in terms of really as the entry point. And there are hundreds of different domains, from identity and access management, security risk assessment, security information event monitoring, encryption. I can go on and on and on. So pick whatever area of specialization you have. The other area, especially for the startups, the way to kind of really also get another seamless entry is we do see a lot of our clients encouraging local entrepreneurship or really have minority and women enablement, firms that needs to be part of in the larger circuit. And that also kind of really overlaps with cybersecurity too. We do often see a need for minority and women, led organizations that need to be part of the larger innovative space. And that could be another one. If you happen to be that kind of startup, make a differentiated aspect, because you will get certain level of entry points with different organizations there too. So that's really kind of my two thoughts, 2 cents there.
Is there a particular reason why they would look at local organizations or local companies?
So I can tell you one of the main reasons is you really do want someone more closer to you. And I would probably say within North America, we see that model in Canada quite a bit. In Canada, if you really go in different provinces, a lot of it's really local talent driven. And we do also have some cities that actually are going with the campaign, which is create more local talent. I think it's really kind of supports the local business models too. But more importantly, I can tell you in any line of business, a lot of relationships and work really gets created when you are in front of the client or really have that kind of relationships and stuff. And I think that's really one of the main drivers, why you see the local promotion. But cybersecurity, again, at the end of the day, I don't want to really generalize that, because it's still a niche scale. I still have to travel to, let's say, Europe or Australia and stuff, because you cannot find every single domain, every single specialty, and every single skill in the same location. And I can tell you for the next decade or so, it's not going to happen. But that being said, you still want to create local talent, because this domain is so drastically changing every day. It's good to kind of have that kind of skills in-house or locally.
Okay.
Can I just side
Anybody
point?
else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, side point, maybe a tangent here, but you know how many times the clients will ask me, look, I need somebody local because I want the ability to walk down the street and talk to them and trade thoughts in person. And then how many of those clients, having then hired a local service provider, never, ever, ever walk down the street and talk to them? There is this perception among at least my client base that local is important. Whether or not it matters to them in the end is sort of a different question. But I think that's also, I mean, to your point, that's something local entrepreneurs can take advantage of. Thankfully, we're in a pretty big locale right here, and it's quite a large pie. So, you know, if you're going to focus on a geographic area, you know, the DFW Metroplex is a heck of a good one.
And here's how you take advantage of local. And this is just a lesson, right? When I was early on in my career, I published some thought leadership, and I was essentially publishing in things that, frankly, my peers and competitors read, but my potential client base was not reading. And so you're in Dallas, Texas. You're in Texas. You know, that market generally, it's one of the largest economic markets in the world by itself. And so as you're thinking about how to be in that local market, figure out where your potential client base is and be there rather than just with your peers and competitors. And when you're there, figure out how to have a point of view and something that's of value to the people that you're engaging with, even in those, you know, non-contractual, non-monetary exchanges. Bring something to the table that blesses them, even if it's just, hey, I know you don't do this every day. Here's what we're seeing that you need to know about. I mean, that's valuable. And so at the end of the day, I would say be out in the flow in the local market and take advantage of the fact that you are in Dallas and you are in Texas, because this is a target-rich environment for you.
So Chad, it sounds like you're saying that communicating with your client company is a really important part of this.
Engaging with, you're saying communicating, I'm saying engagement. And so,
okay.
You know, I would say if you're in this market and you're not thinking about in the area that you sell, you should have a point of view. You should be a thought leader. If you're not taking steps to be out in front of the market with that point of view and that thought leadership, shame on you. You've got to figure out how to engage with the market in a way that lets the market know that you have something of value to offer.
Right. So we have a question here. Let's see. It's from Mike Bellamy. It's, how do startups get new tech noticed? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, I look, it's tough because there's so much noise. There are a lot of people who say they have new tech, for example, and it's going to be something as simple as we've made a new app with a new interface is something that people have done forever. And so then the poor startup that has real new tech over here on the other side is having to compete with that noise. And so I think one of the main things that you have to do is find ways to be in front of your target market, telling them what your new tech can do in a thought-provoking and thought leadership manner. Because, you know, Lalit mentioned the big conferences like an RSA, for example. If you go and you have a booth, you're one of 1,000 booths. Everybody's giving away the USB with their logo on it. You know, everybody has a little prize that you win at the end. What the booths at RSA that make a difference to me are where there's a demo that shows something that I haven't seen before or that I know is doing it better than has ever been done before. That's the cards that I grab and go back and try to engage and have a meeting with so that I enter them sort of in my roster of referrals. But you've got to get out in front and show that again.
Yeah. So let me also make sure I understand the question well, right? You know, when they say, how do the startups get new tech noticed? Are we talking about startups really getting acknowledged themselves, or startups really trying to understand what new technology or developments are happening? Because they're two different things, right? So I'm assuming it's really now in the other way around, which is how do startups really know that what's really developing or what's cooking and what's net new in that space?
The question that he asked was, how do startups get new tech noticed?
Like their technology notice, right?
That's what I am interpreting Mike's question as, yes.
Okay, Mike. Okay.
Mike is saying I created new tech. So yeah, he's wanting to know how to get his new tech noticed.
So Mike, I think this is where I was highlighting earlier. credentializing and creating the network and rapport is the key aspect. And let me give you specific examples here. So I've seen some of the cybersecurity, like, even very small startups, they will like do their homework and they will go in front of like analyst firms such as Forresters and Gartners and others to really really weave in like what they're really doing. Why that is important? Because those forums are already kind of like widely acknowledged by the industry, by the experts, and even operation and stuff they value. So be able to kind of really leverage those forums to showcase your technology gives you like a solid platform as a starting point. Number two, I would probably say if you have developed a cool technology or something, I'm pretty sure you're also applying it somewhere, right? Have what I really call a show and tell through your clients that really come, from, not just from you, but from your clients, really have a better credibility, right? The other channel is now leverage what is called your ecosystem to really, kind of like spread the word and what's really happening. And that could be, and this is what you might find a little strange to hear, but even your competition, not just the peers, showcase like, okay, what you really developed. And I'm telling you, the word travels in the forums. These are the small ways, that you can really go and expand your presence. And when you do all the right things, I can tell you, like, and all those things, you will get noticed and you will get a call from someone. If not already, like through your network, you develop that relationships.
All right. I'd also like to go ahead and read Dan's answer to this question. He typed it up here. Dan says, I found success when partnering with complementary technologies. Companies are flattered when you build an integration with their platform, and they're keen to do co-marketing, contribute to your blogs, and help you be a thought leader. So if your technology has the potential to work well with other technologies, build those integrations and relationships, and then leverage that new relationship for thought leadership. All right. So we have just a few minutes here, and I think Hopin is going to kick us out at 9:45. So any parting thoughts that you guys have? Any tips? Any tips for these startups, or any? So what do you?
Well, the only tip I can really give you, besides all the discussion, and of course, we can spend like all day long like on this topic. This is true with anything. I would say be the go-to technology for something. Means be able to highlight the differentiation that you're really bringing. That's the best way to really, market your product, make a better sell and everything. So always find ways to can really differentiate yourself and showcase. And plus, I think what Dan's point mentioned, like when differentiation really is not really, okay, you have to stand out in all way. How you integrate with different platforms and support those platforms could be also your differentiating story, because then it can work with all these platforms at the same time. Different vendors want to really have a look at your product and technology.
So it looks like Jay just got kicked out, and Dan may still be on mute. So look, if you're a cybersecurity startup and you're trying to make it work, I think you've got to have a few different perspectives. One of them is recognize the noise that I mentioned earlier. Don't just assume you're the only person that the companies that you're engaging with are hearing from, and there's just a lot of noise. The second thing is, a lot of times your best strategy is to think of yourself as replacing an employee or an employee group at your potential client, where they're paying you instead of having to pay people and benefits and have overhead and risk liability of employees there. I actually think I've seen that work really well as a fantastic strategy. Let us replace and solve this problem for you without you having to have people on staff to do it is a winning strategy in the startup cybersecurity field. The third thing that I would say is you've got to have your act together around your own security. It is not credible to come in and have a solution to big enterprise level cybersecurity problems without being at the same time to say, and here's what we do to secure ourselves. Because oftentimes your cybersecurity solution is somehow integrating either by communications or more with the client to the point where they expose themselves by trusting you. And so you've got to be spot on with your own cybersecurity to be able to get that work from the client as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I think everybody's about to get kicked out. I think Hopin just does that at 9:45. So wanted to thank Lalit, Jay, Chad, and Dan once again for doing this. And we'll hope to see you soon in the next.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So, brother, sorry, I did see one of the questions in the chat window about healthcare and security. Where is it going?
Okay.
Since we have a couple minutes, I wanted to take 30 seconds, since that's one of the areas of domains I lead here. I think healthcare of all the sectors, is really has the most need when it comes to cybersecurity. One of the reasons being that's been one of the space that has been hugely transformed in the last few years, especially in the last 6 months, right? I can tell you with all the biomed devices and everything, more and more reliance on that, as well as the remote healthcare, the remote workforce concept. And another big thing that's happening with the healthcare is that they're migrating over to the cloud very rapidly at a very high speed. These are some of the areas that we really see. And of course, the regulations are not really getting any easier with HIPAA, high tech, and high trust really coming, and everyone required can really comply with that. These are some of the key drivers that you want to acknowledge and understand will drive this market space even higher. So
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you. Bye.